Hey guys, welcome back to Ben and Buring's channel. For those of you that have not been here before, my name is Brian. We do online tutorials, we have product reviews, we have a live chat feature on our website to help you through your brooding animal ones. Today, we're talking about the iSpindle. We've got our hands on it, we've configured it, we've built it. We want to see how it compares to the Tilt. Let's check it out. All right, so let's talk about the iSpindle. A couple things that I thought was quite interesting. As you guys probably know, we are big fans of the Tilt hydrometer. We use one constantly. It is so handy. But I wanted to take a look at something else that was maybe in the competing space of the Tilt and see, because it is different, if it's any better than the Tilt itself. These things are very hard to find in the US, and I could not figure out why. None of our local homebrew shops carry them. The big box online retailers, the northern brewers, the more beer, don't carry them, and I could not for the life of me figure out why. Well, turns out Tilt has a patent on these specific products as far as a digital system that measures tilt to determine the gravity of a liquid. And because that patent is here in the US, these can't be sold in the US. So I ended up going to our friendly neighborhood eBay and purchasing it as a kit. Now you can purchase these as a completely assembled kit, or you can get them completely disassembled, which is what I did, and I ended up soldering it all together and actually building it. So we'll talk about that in a minute. This video is not a full build video for this. I really want to talk more about my experience with it and how it compares to the Tilt. There are a lot of other videos that go into some great detail on how to solder these together and how to build them and how to configure them. There's also a lot of versions out there. The one that we're using is the Cherry Phillips. There's other versions that work just as well, but the setup is a little bit different. Speaking of guides and tutorials, when I purchased the iSpindle, I didn't realize there were a couple different versions out there. One of the YouTubers that I saw that actually was very helpful, Open Source Distilling, so I want to give them a quick shout out. So he actually has his own board design. It actually looks pretty cool. And he does a full walkthrough on how to assemble. So if you're looking for a good iSpindle, the Cherry Phillips is good. There's lots of tutorials on it. Open Source Distilling, he goes through some very specific detail on the build. So if you can kind of source your board through him and do the tutorial through him, you'll probably have some pretty good luck.
So step one began with me laying out all the parts, figuring out what goes with what, and then getting out my old soldering iron. This thing hasn't seen any action in years. Like I mentioned before, I'm not great at soldering, but I started going slowly and double checking all my work, and that really helped out. And it was actually kind of a bit of fun to piece everything together, and it slowly came together piece by piece. After getting the whole thing put together, which honestly took me about 3 hours, I test fit the entire apparatus into the tube and made sure that the top would screw on. I was actually pretty happy with the results, how it came back. It slid in without rocking around too much. It was nice and snug. And of course, it's always a good sign when you can close up the container. So next part in the process, I needed to turn on the iSpindle and make sure I did solder everything together and put the battery on correctly. And I want to make sure it powered up. And then I hooked up to my computer, flashed the firmware to the board, and with my first try, it was actually a success. So I was very happy about that. Booted the thing up, connected the iSpindle's Wi-Fi, and started to configure it to connect to my own network and to set preferences like Brix or specific gravity or Celsius or Fahrenheit and so on. Once all the settings were configured, it was time to calibrate the tilt. This involves zeroing out the accelerometer by placing it on a completely level and flat surface, and then preparing a sugar wash solution at the top end of your brewing scale, so a very high gravity. And then you slowly dilute it down 10 gravity points at a time, and measure it so that you have both the gravity of what it actually is with a hydrometer and what angle the tilt is floating at. And that gives you the full range of gravity from when you pitch the yeast and it's at a high gravity to the end of fermentation when it's a low gravity, which is the final gravity. At this point, it really kind of began dawning on me that this was a bit of pain in the ass. Once I figured out the steps, it was not too bad, but I really had to focus to remember what I was doing and what step I was on. I kept getting confused and forgetting if I'd measured it, if I'd gotten the tilt, if I wrote down correctly, so focus was definitely paramount. Once I got through the entire brewing range, the software takes that information and generates a formula that then converts the tilt angle as it floats to an actual gravity measurement.
Okay, on to the pros and cons of the iSpindle. First and foremost, this is way less expensive than the Tilt. So the Tilt, at the time of this filming, is about $125. It's good to go. It has a companion app, and so it's really kind of plug and play. Now, the iSpindle requires obviously more setup, and depending on the kit that you buy. If you buy it fully disassembled but with all the parts and you put it together yourself, On eBay, I was able to find some deals for like $46 with shipping. Super cheap. If you get it pre-built, so basically it comes as is, it's assembled, those are about $65 with shipping. So still quite a bargain compared to the Tilt. This bad boy runs on Wi-Fi, not Bluetooth. So the range is much, much wider, which we had some issues with the Tilt and the Bluetooth connectivity, and I didn't really want to purchase a Bluetooth range extender for the Tilt. It wasn't a huge deal. I just get within 10 feet of my fridge, there's a reading and we're good. This guy goes throughout the entire house, so I can check it from anywhere. The other nice thing that this has is a rechargeable battery and a pretty decent battery life depending on how often you're pulling the stats. Speaking of pulling stats, this is fully customizable as far as how frequently it's pulling data and what type of data it's pulling. You can really hone in on exactly what you want. The Tilt is obviously more plug and play, not as much configuration, and the battery itself is not rechargeable. Now, it does last quite a while because it is Bluetooth, which is low power and low power consumption, but it is not a rechargeable battery. Finally, integrations. The iSpindle integrates with Brewfather, as long as you're on one of their paid plans, but the integration for it is actually very easy to set up and very, very handy, especially if you have multiple iSpindles. You can track it for different brews, so you've got fermenting at the same time, which is fantastic. As far as the cons, so there are a couple things that you should be aware of before you dive into this. The build of it is extremely intimidating. To go in and solder some of this stuff, to find the parts, to understand what's going on, it's a little scary at first. Honestly, it's really not that bad. I am not a professional solderer by any stretch. I dabble a little bit. There's great tutorials for it. And the assembly actually wasn't that bad. It does take quite a while to set up. So by the time I had purchased this, it was about 8 hours to put it together, to hook it to the Wi-Fi, to figure out the integration. So it was really about 8 hours to get this thing up and running, including the calibration, because you also have to calibrate it. The Tilt really took about as long as is necessary to download the companion app that went with it. So we're talking 3 minutes and it's up and running. If you're a DIYer and you like to mess around and tweak things, this is a lot of fun. If you're just looking for some easy gravity readings, the Tilt is going to be your friend. Because this has no native app, there's a lot of options with integrations. A lot of them are on cloud services and a lot of them are online. As I mentioned, the Brewfather integration is great, but you gotta pay for it. So you're saving a little bit in the initial investment with the iSpindle, but you may have to pay it a little bit later on. The other thing that I was very surprised at is the size of this guy, especially compared to the Tilt. This is a very, very compact design that will fit in your carboy. So if you've got a narrow-necked fermenter that you're using, whether it's glass, whether it's PET, this guy will drop in no problem. There's no way you're jamming that into a carboy. So if you're doing a full-size fermenter, you've got a conical, you've got a wide-mouth bubbler, a big-mouth bubbler, whatever they're called. This will drop in no problem. Hey guys, thanks for watching our video on the iSpindle. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. That really means a lot to us if you do and helps us to continue to bring that wonderful content to you. Also, check out our new podcast, the Hop Break Craft Beer Cast, available on all of your favorite podcast suppliers. Catch you later, my friends.